Let's go through the Chelsea news today. Starting with this, Chelsea's only two options in regard to the stadium is demolishing Stamford Bridge and building a new stadium on the site, or building at Earl's Court. This is at the moment one of the tricky predicaments that Chelsea are in. First of all, is the Earl's Court site even available? Secondly, where would we go if we were to demolish Stamford Bridge and rebuild? It's a difficult conversation to have, this one, because at the same time I understand Chelsea will be falling behind every single year that we don't have 60,000, 70,000 gate revenue every weekend, and at 42,000, that isn't anywhere near one of the biggest stadiums in the Premier League. So Chelsea are missing out. And the difficulty here is I don't ever want to leave Stamford Bridge. And that's just my personal feeling towards it. Obviously, as a Chelsea fan my whole life, I don't want to be playing matches at a different stadium. But I also understand financially, it just isn't going to be feasible to be selling 40,000 tickets every week for the longevity of the football club being competitive in a financial sense in the Premier League. So I don't really think there's any updates on this one. We've been talking about new stadiums for about 5 to 10 years, and it's the same storyline every single time. So let's move on to the next piece of news. Cole Palmer on Donald Trump. When he gave me the awards, he said his son is my biggest fan. Palmer said, I can't remember what I said. I think I said thank you or something. Now, I'd love to watch like a 20-minute interview between Donald Trump and Cole Palmer. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get that to happen. Is Donald Trump's son actually a massive fan of Cole Palmer? If he is, then great stuff. But I do think all in all, whatever you think of Trump, I'm not here to talk about politics on GBFC, that's for sure. Whatever influence Chelsea had in America, it is now exponentially bigger as a result of this tournament. Seeing Donald Trump, the president of the US, giving out the medals, giving out the trophy, and even stealing a medal for himself. Absolutely flipping bonkers, I'll tell you that for free. But I think it's interesting in terms of what we're going to see in terms of Chelsea's presence here in the US moving forward. So, Ben Jacobs was on Alex Goldberg's stream and they were talking about Chelsea's summer transfer targets. And The Athletic also reported earlier this week that there are 3 players right now that Chelsea are looking at. Jorel Hato of Ajax, Alejandro Garnacho of Manchester United, and Morgan Rogers of Aston Villa. And this is what Ben Jacobs had to say on Morgan Rogers. Morgan Rogers is a dream target for Chelsea, but I am not aware of a way that Chelsea sign him at the moment, even perhaps with Nicholas Jackson being a target for Aston Villa. Villa have an untouchable tag over Rogers. We know that the word untouchable in a footballing transfer sense doesn't really hold any weight until the transfer window is over. We have currently got Saudi Arabian clubs looking at spending 350 million euros to bring Vinicius Jr. to Saudi Arabia, and I'm pretty sure Vinicius Jr. would be seen as untouchable by Perez and Alonso at Real Madrid. So the untouchable label, I don't really believe in any of it, to be quite honest. I'd like to. If we're talking about some of Chelsea's players, I'd love for Palmer, Caicedo to all be actually untouchable for the next 10 flipping years. But Morgan Rogers to Chelsea. We're going to go through and take a little look at this in a minute. You guys know that we absolutely love this graphic, and you can see at the top there, we've got Rogers, Eze, and Garnacho. And we're going to kind of go through and take a look at certain scenarios where if Jackson's sold, if Felix is sold, if Nkunku is sold, because at the minute, we don't really know what's going on here. You've got rumours that Aston Villa want Nicholas Jackson. Manchester United want Nicholas Jackson. So there could be a sense and a negotiation between Man United and Chelsea. If United want Nkunku or Jackson, then Chelsea will most likely inquire for Alejandro Garnacho that way. Does it work the same with Aston Villa? If Morgan Rogers truly is untouchable, which at this point he might be, because remember, Aston Villa was supposed to make X amount of money before the new financial year in footballing terms. They sold their women's team the same way that Chelsea did in order to comply with PSR. So you're not going to hear me putting in a peep about that one, because if we did it, of course everyone else is going to try and do it too. That's why Premier League clubs didn't vote against this, because they knew that they would have the opportunities to do the same. When it comes to what is actually going to happen here, we got to weigh up the probabilities of who do we actually think is more likely to go for Nicholas Jackson. Because when you see this, we've got Morgan Rogers and Alejandro Garnacho as options. And if we're going to move these players around, I would put Garnacho in the left wing category. He's a left winger out and out. Morgan Rogers is very much where we've got that number 3 right now, which is the hybrid player between the left winger and also the number 10. And when we think about Joao Pedro and what we saw of him in the first 2.5 matches of his Chelsea career, you guys can see now I've actually put him ahead of Liam Delap. And we did this just before the semi-finals of the tournament. Mark Hughes there as an option. But there are still these guys, Nicholas Jackson and Christopher Nkunku. I'm not even going to entertain the idea of Joao Felix staying for now, because I think he's absolutely gone. And I do think it would probably be the hardest player for Enzo Maresca to try and conjure up some kind of tactical plan to keep him in the team. So let's move back to this again. Eze we're just going to leave up here for now, because I don't think the Eze to Chelsea story is strong enough. But Morgan Rogers just doesn't go away. So if you sign Morgan Rogers, the likelihood will be this: Nicholas Jackson gone. Does that leave a space for Nkunku? Probably not. But I do think if Chelsea struggle to get rid of Christopher Nkunku, then maybe we see Nkunku as one of those options. Now, Christopher Nkunku, I don't think ever joined Chelsea anticipating that he was going to be a backup man. I don't think Nkunku ever wanted or planned to be a bit part player, to be playing Conference League football, though this coming season, it's going to be a little bit different, isn't it? Because we're not playing Conference League, we're playing Champions League. So when it comes to this kind of squad depth that we're looking at here, is that going to be enough for Chelsea? And if I take Garnacho out of that too, I don't see a world where Chelsea don't sign another attacker, because that's leaving far too much on Nkunku. And then Mark Guiu, who I think is a player that could have more opportunities, but I don't think Maresca fully trusts him yet. So if we look at that and we don't sign anybody else, you got Gittins and George on the left, Palmer, Joao Pedro, Dewsbury Hall, potentially there. You've also got the potential of Enzo Fernandez there too. If we do play Reece James in this position, move Caicedo over to there, and then you've got Enzo Fernandez as a potential option in that, based on what we saw in the final, where Pedro Neto was over on this left side and Cole Palmer was then over on the right. So there's definitely options here. And Chelsea's business, from now until the end of the transfer window, we know it's going to be predominantly sales. I don't think there's any world where we sign any more than 3 players maximum between now and the end of the window. If I'm being realistic, right? Because we're going to look at Jorel Hato. I think Jorel Hato could be one of those guys that comes in. Ajax apparently might be willing to entertain offers of around £40 million. And that is what we've heard from Ben Jacobs. There's also an update here regarding Marco Correa and a contract, saying he's very happy to stay at Chelsea and is also happy with his wage package. So there's no real agitation on that end from Chelsea, which is great news, because Marco Correa is a fantastic left back and he's also one of the more experienced members of the squad. So Jorel Hato, I absolutely think, is a great option, because not only is he left back cover for Marco Correa, who, look, Correa plays so much football, we're going to need to protect him if, God forbid it happens, but if there was ever to be an injury to him, I want someone that can do the getting up the wing the way that Correa does. Because what I find fascinating about Maresca's tactics in the final is that it was Malo Gusto going further forward with, as you can see here, Cole Palmer playing on that right side with the ability to cut in, to connect with the likes of Joao Pedro. So, based on all of this, I think Chelsea right now, it could be any of them. It could be Garnacho. If it's Garnacho, this is more what it looks like. You've got Garnacho fighting with Gittins and Tyreek George. What would happen to him? Would it be alone? You're probably likely to see something a bit like that with Joao Pedro or Delap fighting for that number 9. But I also think the combination that we saw, the link-up play between Palmer and Joao Pedro, even in the flipping second game that we've ever seen Pedro play, let alone the fact he scored a brace in the semi-final. I honestly think it's going to be impossible to keep João Pedro out of this team because the link up with Palmer was just so good. And moving forward, right, who do I want to see the club sign? I would love for it to be Morgan Rogers. I don't know if it's going to be possible. And when we look again at this graphic to see the options here, if we don't manage to sign him, will Nicholas Jackson stay? And I've been thinking about this more and more over the course of the day. And obviously, I'm in the US right now, so you guys see this at 7 a.m. the following day. I've been thinking more and more about Jackson. And as much as the goal scoring record isn't bad, we cannot just forget the fact that he had those 2 red cards in massive moments. He's missed so many big chances at times since he's been at Chelsea. But I also can't help but think that he's going to go somewhere else and do really well. And this is the problem that we've got with this model where we have bought so many young players. And of course, when you buy youngsters, they're not all going to be immediate hits. There's going to be some that will go, such as maybe Noni Madueke at Arsenal, such as it could be Nicholas Jackson. There are some that are going to go and they're going to be better players than they ever were at Chelsea. But this is...
As a Chelsea fan, I'm experiencing a roller coaster of emotions right now. On the one hand, winning the Club World Cup was absolutely incredible. Seeing Cole Palmer shine, scoring twice in the final, and even being awarded the tournament's best player was thrilling. He's a talent that represents exactly the future we want to see at the club. Young, decisive, and calm under pressure. But at the same time, it was impossible not to feel a certain discomfort seeing Donald Trump up there on stage, hogging the spotlight at a moment that should have been solely for the players. It was bizarre, almost surreal. Regarding the stadium, I confess I'm torn. Stamford Bridge is the soul of Chelsea. I grew up watching the team play there, and I have memories I'll never forget at that ground. But realistically, we can no longer compete financially with the European giants playing in a 42,000-seat stadium. We need to grow. And growth, in this case, means giving up something emotional for something structural. Rebuilding in the same location seems like the best solution to me, even if it means playing for years in a different stadium. Leaving for Earls Court completely feels like abandoning our roots, and that, personally, pains me just thinking about it. Regarding the squad movements, I understand the need for adjustments. I like Nicholas Jackson, but he hasn't completely convinced me yet, especially given his inconsistent form. If selling him means bringing in someone like Garnacho, I think the club should consider it. Now, Morgan Rogers would be a dream signing, but the price tag is likely a major obstacle. I also have to mention my fear that, in the future, Real Madrid might come knocking for Enzo Fernandez. I know it's just speculation for now, but in modern football, untouchable is a word that has lost its weight. If he continues at this pace, it will be difficult to hold on. In short, we are in a moment of enormous transition, on the pitch, off it, even in our identity. But if Chelsea continues to do things with a cool head and a warm heart, as they did in this World Cup, I believe the future will be even brighter.